Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, the Brooke Ashley, and today we are here to discuss The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Season 2, Episode 13. First things first, I have to say this. These girls are really giving what the other girls were supposed to have gave. This second half, I've been saying it now for these last 4 or 5 recaps. This second half of this season has been phenomenal. So, with all that being said, let's just jump right on into this recap because we don't have a minute to spare. So we start this episode off with all the ladies back in SLC and they're telling their spouses about what went down in Vail. So we see Lisa telling her husband that she is so tired of all these ladies and especially Whitney. It's not that Whitney is a pot stirrer. She's like a little whisk or something. I call her like a whiskney. I said, Lisa, I want to just study you for like a day because the things that you come up with. I mean, and Lisa really thought she was doing something when she said a whiskney. And I was screaming because her husband looked so uninterested because he was like, I'm gonna go and get a drink. And she was like, no, stay right here. I need you to listen to me go on and on and on about this Vail trip. So while Lisa is going on and on and on, her phone rings and it's a text from Jen. Jen has gotten a new number and she's texting all the ladies. And she wants to know if Lisa would be willing to sit down and have lunch with her. So of course, Lisa's doing the most. She's like, oh my gosh, babe, that's Jen Shah. She just texted me about if I would want to go out for lunch. Like, I just have so many mixed emotions about this whole thing. Like, I just don't even know if I want to go. So her husband, John, is like, Lisa, I think you should go and hear her out. And Lisa's like, no, I'm not ready yet. I am not ready to face Jen. This is too much. Again, I have really mixed emotions about this whole thing. I said, now, girl, it's really not that deep. And especially the way you were writing so hard for Miss Jen earlier on in the season, at least hear what she has to say. You're not going to be indicted because you had a meal with her. Like, enough. Lisa goes on to say how friendship is a two-way street, and I personally don't feel like I'm the best friend for Jen to talk to right now, and I'll talk to Jen when I'm ready to talk to Jen. Like I've said since the beginning, Lisa is a friend to nobody. Lisa is a friend to herself and herself only. That's it and that's all. And the faster all these ladies realize that, the better off everybody will be. But I digress. Now, mind you, while we see Lisa talking to her husband about what happened in Vail, we also see the other women talking to their families about what went down as well. So we see Heather talking to her daughter, and while she's telling Ashley what happened, she receives a call from Jen, and Jen wants to know if she would be willing to meet up for lunch in the next hour or so. So Heather's like, yeah, girl, like, sure, I'll meet you there. Can't wait to see you. So now we see Jen pulling up in her borrowed Porsche and borrowed fur, and she's waiting on Heather. Now, I'm saying borrowed because if you watched the Hulu documentary that just dropped, then you know that Jen Shah's former assistant spilled the tea, honey, that her Porsche is borrowed and her furs are all leased. So I was like, girl. And I'm just so confused as to why she'd be driving around in a borrowed car and leased furs when she was making millions of dollars scamming. I mean, what did she spend the money on? Just a hot mess. So Heather finally arrives to the restaurant. Her and Jen share a hug, and you can tell that Jen is visibly distraught. She's very subdued, she's very quiet, but she is happy to see a smiling face. So Jen says in her confessional that she prayed to God that he would show her who her real friends are. And how when she called Heather, Heather was the only one to pick up the phone with no questions asked. Jen thanks Heather for coming to lunch and she starts crying. She goes on to say how she just needs a friend right now. Heather holds her hand and says, "Girl, I got you. I'm your friend. Like, don't worry about it." Heather says in her confessional how she felt the same way when her world was turned upside down when she got a divorce. And she could have used a friend when she was going through that. Now, let me just say this. I don't know if it's because I'm just petty, but I feel like Heather is a lot nicer than me. Because I don't know if I could have the grace to forgive somebody who was slandering me, calling me a racist, making fun of my appearance, just calling me everything but a child of God. And then when they're in trouble, they reach out to me. Like, I just don't know if I could have met Jen at that restaurant. But Jen, let me just say, you do need to send Heather some flowers, some chocolate, something to show how appreciative you are of her still standing beside you despite what's going on. I'm just saying. So now Jen starts discussing that fateful day when she showed up on the bus with all them on the way to Vail, and then the cops came looking for her. She says that when she got the phone call from Sharif's number, she realized very quickly that it wasn't Sharif on the other end. She gets off the bus, her aunt picks her up, and she says they get pulled over like a few minutes in. Jen says that she was getting scared at this point and she thought that she was about to be kidnapped. So she says that she was thrown into a minivan, taken to this break room, and in the break room, her left hand was handcuffed to the chair. Then Jen says that while this was happening, she had no idea that the police were at her house holding her son up, who is 15 years old, mind you. They were holding him up at gunpoint. So now Jen starts sobbing. She's like, my son and my nephew. Like, what if they had moved the wrong way? Those cops could have shot him and then said, well, you know, we were nervous. And Jen is right to have those concerns and fears because the world sees her sons as black. And the fact that they are living in Utah, which is predominantly white, where there's racism, okay? Those police could have easily harmed her son and nephew and nobody would have batted an eye. So I definitely did feel for Jen because I remember I was very upset when I saw that footage of the police walking her son and nephew out the house like that. That was unacceptable. You're here to get Jen. Why are you doing anything to her son and nephew in the first place? That was out of order. And I was also pissed at Bravo for even showing that. Jen is also upset because the fact that her nephew and his family from South Central are there living with her and Coach Shah, she's like, they moved away to leave gang activity and now they're here and this happens. And I know her nephew was like, well, damn, we could have just stayed in LA then, like dealing with all of this. So now the conversation changes gears and Heather goes on to ask about Stuart. Jen says, yeah, I mean, I have no idea if the feds busted into Stuart's home with AR-15s and all these guns and stuff, but I will say that I did see Stuart in the next break room, and when I passed by him, all he said to me was, I'm sorry. Then Jen goes on to say in her confessional that Stuart was running his own businesses. I said, Jen, let me stop you right now because that makes no sense and you know it. You have said so yourself in multiple interviews that Stuart was always there at your beck and call whenever you needed him at whatever time. If you're a personal assistant, Let me tell you something. There is no time for you to even have a life of your own because your life is so wrapped up and intertwined with the person that you are working for. So, miss me with he was running other businesses. No, he was not. And I loved how Heather clocked the whole thing when she was like, Stuart's been your number one guy this entire time. All of a sudden, it sounds like you're trying to distance yourself from him. And that's exactly what Jen is doing. Jen is terrified. And if you watch the documentary, if you've been reading any of the articles coming out about this whole entire situation, then you know that Stuart did plead guilty. And if he testifies against Jen for a lighter sentence, Jen is going to be up Schitt's Creek. Now, Jen starts asking Heather about the Vail trip. Heather's like, girl, I'm not even going to lie to you. When we were on the bus on the way there, we were all reading the breaking news articles about you and this case. Then she tells how Lisa was on the phone with all 6 of her attorneys. Of course, Jen is upset. Heather goes on to tell her that Lisa is worried about how this can affect her, and she wants to distance herself from Jen. So now Jen is like, are you serious right now? Like, Lisa is so full of it because I thought that she was going to stick beside me, but it turns out that she's not. Then she goes on to say that she had no idea that Lisa was so easily influenced. I mean, I don't understand why you're surprised. Lisa is the definition of a fair-weathered friend. She's with you in the good times, and it's like, shout out to everybody, I have fun when times get tough. Lisa is the friend that you call up when you want to go shopping, when you want to hit the club, when you want to go on vacation. Like, she's that girl. I think it's important for people to compartmentalize their friends. You have to know what friend is for what. You have your party friends, your shopping friends, the friends that you invite over when you want to have a heart-to-heart, the friends that you want, who are going to pray for you, the friends who are going to turn up. Like, you know what I'm saying? You have different friends for different things. Everybody's not going to be that all-encompassing friend where you can cry your eyes out to and spill your heart out to. No. You have friends who is very shallow and you have a good time. And I think that Jen needs to realize that. Everybody is not going to serve the same purpose. Heather seems to be one of those friends where she's going to be with you through the ups, the downs, when it's just mundane and just boring. She's going to be with you when you want to turn up, when you want to cry. Like, she's going to be there for it all. But everybody is not going to be a Heather. And you have to know with Lisa, it's just about having a good time. It's not going to get that deep. It's going to be real surface. Then Heather adds salt to the wound by telling Jen that Meredith wants nothing to do with her. Jen is sobbing and she's like, what? I've apologized to Meredith repeatedly. Just because you apologize to somebody does not mean that the other person has to accept it. It doesn't mean that the other person has to forgive you. It doesn't mean that the other person has to want to still be in this friendship with you. People have the right to say, you know what? Thank you for the apology, but I still want nothing to do with you. That's okay. Jen's track record in this friend group is not the best. The way she talks to people poorly, the way she just acts so irrationally, she's always screaming and yelling about something. I mean, who wants to deal with that? Meredith was dealing with a woman who she believes was harassing her son with a burner phone. I mean, she has every right to say, you know what, I'm good. I don't hate you. I don't wish any ill on you, but I want nothing to do with you. And that is okay. That is her right to say that. So now Jen ends the conversation by saying that she's not here to convince anybody that she's a good person. And when she's proven innocent in this whole ordeal, she wants a big I'm sorry from everybody. I said, sis, let's just wait for the verdict to be announced, okay? We move on to a very interesting scene, I might add, with Whitney and her husband, Justin. They're in the kitchen and they're discussing Whitney's business. Remember how Whitney has a beauty line and she's doing a rebrand? Child, we find out that Whitney has damn near emptied out their entire savings for this relaunch. Whitney goes on to say that everything is riding on the success of this brand. So now Whitney tells Justin that she applied for this $1 million line of credit, and if she gets it, it's great, but if she doesn't get it, they're going to have to come up with $250,000, and Justin is going to have to co-sign for it. Now, mind you, this is his first time hearing this, so he's visibly pissed, like, why didn't you run this by me months ago? Like, why am I just hearing this now? So now Justin says, look, I'm going to keep it real, sis. With our age difference, I'm in my 50s, you're in your early 30s. I'm going to most likely be going before you. And I would like to leave this earth with you and the kids having something. And if I were to die right now, y'all would have nothing. Whitney starts crying and she says how she's bad with money. Now, Whitney, I have a lot to say about this whole entire situation. Sis, money burns a hole in my pocket too. I like to spend money. I sort of live by tomorrow's not promised, buy it today, you'll always make the money back. That's how I feel. I enjoy my life. I buy things. You know, I like it. But I will say that some stuff is just stupid. I will never do something to the detriment of myself where you would risk your home and everything because of poor spending habits. The fact that Whitney didn't even run that whole $1 million line of credit to Justin, and the fact that he'd have to be a co-signer on that, I was like, sis, are you kidding me? This is how people get divorced. And Whitney, you do know that, God forbid, y'all go bankrupt, you and Justin's marriage is going to be in trouble. And it also makes sense as to why you've really amped it up with the drama, because you are desperate to secure your spot for season 3. I said, Whitney, this is a hot, raggedy mess that you're up here betting every damn thing on this line. Don't get me wrong, I am all for you have to spend money to make money. I get it. Because I invest in my channel. I'm always buying new equipment, new cameras, new lights, new this, new that. I get it. The props, the flowers, the champagne that you see, I mean, yeah, it all costs a cute coin. And I love doing this, so I don't care. But I'm never going to do something to the detriment of myself that's going to put me in a really bad situation. You get what I'm saying? Whitney, this was stupid. And I really want y'all to stop coming on this show thinking that because you're on the hottest reality TV show, that because you have a business, it's going to blow up and you're going to become the next Bethany Frankel. For every success story, there are 20 other housewives who launched businesses and they crashed and burned. I hope for your sake, I hope for your babies that the skincare does do well. And don't forget that Justin has 3 other children from his first marriage. So if he were to go now, none of his kids would get anything. Again, Whitney, I hope this all works out. Now we move on to a short scene with Mary. Mary is hiring an organizer because her closet and her bedroom, absolute chaos. I mean, I was getting anxiety looking at her closet. Everything is just cluttered. There's no space. It was madness. I want Mary to do a complete renovation of that home. Her home is dated. Her closet is just disorganized. I mean, that's an understatement, but just tear that house down and start from scratch. But anyhow, she's joking around with the organizer about how she's a hoarder and how she just needs it to be all cleaned up. I was really screaming when the camera would pan to her shoe rack and the bags, and it was the most tackiest pieces. Like, she had these red and white Gucci boots, and I love Gucci to death, but those had to be some of the tackiest boots I had ever seen. I was like, Mary, why? When it comes to Mary, Mary is too caught up in having a label. It's the fact that it's designer and it's expensive. That's what gets her. But the actual piece doesn't look like anything. I mean, when they showed some of the Christian Louboutins that she had, I was like, oh, like, why did she get those? And I'm a label whore myself, but if I think that something doesn't look good and it's designer, it doesn't look good. So we see Mary say in her confessional that she has the things that she has, and it's not by taking other people's money. And she finds it very disrespectful that these women would even say such a thing. Then she goes on to say how most people have attachments to their family, but because she's estranged from her mom for over 20 years, she's bonded with the things in her closet. Like I've said, since Mary has very poor social skills, not a lot of friends, she's very awkward, that's the reason why she loves things. And these designer pieces are the reason why she gets out of the bed every day. And when Mary told the organizer that she could take whatever she wanted in her closet, I said, sis, go about your business, collect your money, and keep it moving. I would not trust Mary because Mary's the type to forget about what she said, and then she'd be calling the police on you saying that you stole from her. So no thanks. Some offers, I'm like, it's not even worth it. I'll just buy it myself. Mm-mm. And I've heard that Mary is quite cheap, and she kind of doesn't like to pay people for their services. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was her way of saying, well, you know what, sis, I'm not going to pay you, but have all this stuff in my closet. Like, that's payment enough because it's worth so much money. Again, I just wouldn't trust it. I'd be like, you know what, thank you, but no thanks. Just cut me the check when I'm done with all this, okay? We move on to the next scene with Lisa and Meredith. They're going horseback riding, and I loved Meredith's full-blown equestrian gear. She looked amazing, and she killed it. I said, no, Miss Lisa, what happened to you? Lisa couldn't even get the horse to walk. And Lisa was sitting there bragging about how she's been horseback riding since she was 4. I said, Lisa's always bragging about her skills at something, and then when we see her, she does a poor job. The same way that she was an ice skater back in the day, and she could hardly skate when they were in Vail. And in season 1, when she was bragging about how she knows how to race cars, remember that when they were in Vegas and they did the Lamborghini racing? And she was the slowest one on the track. Heather and Whitney were out lapping her. I said, Lisa, just stop talking, sis. Just stop. So they finish up with their horseback riding. Well, really Meredith, because Meredith was the one who was doing a great job. Lisa wasn't. So now they sit down and have some tea. And of course, they start talking about this whole mess with Jen. So now Lisa starts off the conversation and she says, Meredith, the other day, Jen called me about going out for coffee and catching up. But I don't know right now because I'm going through a lot of mixed emotions about this whole thing. So Meredith is looking at Lisa like, oh, really? What changed? So now Lisa says, you know, Meredith, I really didn't understand what you all were going through when it came to Jen until a few weeks ago. I mean, at my son's photo shoot, and then the way it just feels like it's been a very one-sided friendship, and I don't like that. And I feel really manipulated, and I feel really sad because I've given Jen a lot of support. I've been a really good friend to Jen. Now Lisa brings up Whitney and Heather. She's upset because she feels like they're using her as their punching bag and how they spearheaded the whole conversation about Cameron. She goes on to say that the reason why Cameron was invited to that party was because he's on the board of that organization. Lisa, I need for you to pick a lane. Either you want to be the villain or the victim, but you can't be both. I'm sick and tired of you sitting there, throwing rocks, hiding your hands, and then acting like somebody's doing something to you once you've been called out. Whitney and Heather are not out to get you. They simply see through your lies, they see through the BS, and they're holding your feet to the fire. That's it, and that's all. So now Meredith interjects and says, you know what upset me the most? The fact that Mary wasn't really able to speak her piece and set the record straight on how she felt about things. So now Lisa says, well, whose fault is that? Whitney and Heather. Whitney and Heather didn't allow Mary to speak. So now Meredith says, no, let's not put all the blame on those two. It's everybody's fault. Everybody needs to be held accountable for their actions. So, child, Lisa must have lost her mind, and she starts yelling at Meredith. She says, I need somebody to have my effing back, okay? This is very upsetting to me. It is very upsetting to me. So Meredith says again, listen, Lisa, at the end of the day, everybody had a hand in the mess, and everybody needs to own up and take accountability. Then Meredith checks Lisa real quick, and she's like, and by the way, I'm really offended that you would even say that I don't have your back. Like, I always have your back, so don't even try it. I said, Meredith, you better get into her. And I said, how funny that Lisa wants to complain about nobody having her back, but she didn't even have her best friend's back when Jen was coming after her. It's real funny how that works. With Lisa, it's a lot of one-sided loyalty, but she wants your full-blown loyalty and support. How does that work? This reunion is about to be one for the books because not only are we dealing with three major storylines, Jen and her legal situation, Mary and these cult rumors, and then it's going to be them tearing Lisa up for how she's been an instigator all season long and being the world's dumbest villain. She's going to be crying and running off the stage the same way that she did last season. And I hope they bring Angie back on for a few more episodes. And I hope they bring Angie back for the reunion too. Because I want to see that showdown go on about the whole catering debacle. Because I still believe that Lisa was behind it. But again, I digress. So now we move on to a short scene with Jenny and her daughter. They're going on for a Vietnamese tasting. And we find out that Jenny wants to have a lunch for all the ladies to get to know her better and to get to know her culture. It was so funny because she brought her daughter and her daughter was taste testing all the food. The food looked delicious. And when the owner of the restaurant was looking to, get the daughter's approval, and the daughter was like, I think it needs some more sauce, or I think it needs some more salt. And the owner was looking at the daughter like, girl, don't sit up here with these cameras in my face and ruin my business acting like this food isn't delicious. She was really nervous, but it was cute because at the end, the daughter did like the food. She gave the food 2 thumbs up. So now we move on to one of the most dramatic scenes that I personally think in all of Housewives history. So we see Jen Shah back at the house, and she has some Popeyes for her and Sharif. I'm not going to hold you. My mouth was salivating when I saw that Popeyes hit the screen. Coach Shah is happy because Popeyes is his favorite. They're sitting down eating, and Jen starts talking about all of her woes and concerns and her grievances about this whole ordeal. So she brings up Lisa not reaching out to her, how she's had to reach out to everybody in her group, and nobody except for Heather has reached back out. So now Jen starts getting choked up, and she says, I'm innocent. Like, I had nothing to do with this. I don't know what's going on. And she says, when we got married for better or for worse, and this is worse right now. So Coach Shah's just listening, and he says, okay. So Jen starts hysterically crying, and Coach Shah says, okay, baby, I believe you. So now Jen is also freaking out because the retainer for the lawyers is $1.5 million, and she doesn't know where on God's green earth they're going to get this money. While Jen is fighting back tears, she starts getting really upset, and she brings up how over all the years that they have helped Sharif's family financially, She has not gotten one phone call, not a card, not a text message. She has gotten nothing from any of his side of the family. So now Coach Shah gets upset and he says, look, just because my family hasn't reached out, please know that they are hurting for you, they love you, and they are thinking about you. He says, my mom, my dad, my siblings, everybody is hurting and praying for you. Like, just stop. Then he goes on to say how he's her husband and he's not going to leave her and his faith will not falter. Then he goes on to add that yes, this is a lot of pain, it's a lot of stress on the family, but they will get through it. You can tell that Coach Shah is also terrified about what's going to happen to his wife, whether or not they stay together. We don't know all that, but it did seem that in that moment, he did want to be by his wife's side. I think that Coach Shah is hurting for how his boys are going to fare to this news, to whatever happens to their mom. The fact that their mom might be put away for years and she might miss a lot of important moments. I think that he's probably sad that they ever joined this show in the first place. I think in that moment he wanted to be the anchor and he wanted to just seem like it's going to be okay. Sometimes all anybody needs to hear in life is it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. And I think that that's just what she needed to hear. You could tell that this scene was raw. It was real. There was no acting or playing anything up for the cameras. Jen meant every single word, every single tear that we saw. She was livid. She was upset. She's scared. She's nervous. It's just a very sad situation. And even if the verdict does come back that her and Stuart are innocent, I don't know if her and Sharif's marriage would survive. Because think about the stress that this trial is about to have on everybody. The money that's being spent, money that they don't have. It's just a lot. And when you think about how Sharif and Jen have been on the brink of divorce for quite some time now, this is definitely going to exacerbate the issues that they were having before. So, I mean, I know Coach Shah was saying that he won't leave her and he's got her back and he's going to stick beside her, but I truly don't know if he's going to stick by that if the verdict does come back that she's guilty. I just don't see it. But again, this is a very sad situation and I just really feel for their sons because their sons are dealing with a lot, especially the youngest. We move on to the final scene of the night. It's the day of Whitney's photo shoot for her beauty skincare line. And we find out that Whitney has spent $20,000 on this photo shoot. So now Heather and Jenny come over for support. And I was screaming because Jenny was like, I don't understand why none of her products are in the pictures. Like, you see the models holding up dogs and bunnies and flowers. Like, girl, where are the products? Are you trying to sell us flowers and pets, or are you trying to sell us some skincare? Like, Whitney, girl, you did not think this through because even I could have told you, like, get the products in the shots. While the photo shoot is going on, the three of them go outside and Jenny invites them to her lunch. They're super excited. And then Whitney goes on to ask if she invited Jen. Jenny says, of course she did. So now Heather reveals that she went out with Jen for lunch and how Jen is devastated at how public this whole thing is. So Heather goes on to say that she's just praying and hoping that Jen is innocent in this whole thing and how she wouldn't wish this on anybody. So now Whitney interjects and brings up how she's still struggling about how she feels regarding Lisa and Mary. Then we find out that she got Cameron's number from Angie and her and Cameron were on the phone for 3 hours and the tea that he was spilling about Mary would blow everybody's mind. Then Whitney goes on to say how it's not in her best interest to take Mary down on her own. And Jenny's like, girl, why are you so afraid of Mary? Like, what's that all about? Whitney says that Mary's intimidating, and the fact that Mary has a whole congregation who doesn't question her and they look to her as a god. I mean, like, come on, sis, that's gonna intimidate anybody. Jenny's getting aggravated and she's like, say what you want. At the end of the day, we're not in Mary's congregation. It's apparent that Jenny really isn't afraid of Mary because we see in the mid-season trailer that her and Mary get into it yet again. And it looks like she's throwing something at Mary too, which I didn't like, but I said, it's clear that Jenny wants to have a beef with somebody on this cast to preserve her spot on the show for next season. So we end this episode with Whitney saying that if she's going to walk away from this friendship, she needs to know all the facts. It's obvious that the friendship is over. Mary didn't give you a gift. She keeps calling you little girl. She's over you. She doesn't like you. Just leave it alone. You're trying to expose her. You're on the phone with Cameron for 3 hours. Like, it's enough already. Why do we keep going around and around beating a dead horse about this? Like, y'all don't like each other. Go your separate ways and keep it pushing. But y'all, that was the episode. This was a 10 out of 10. Like I said in the beginning, Salt Lake City is really that girl. Like, she is really coming for the #1 spot, and I am here for it. But as always, thank you all for watching my recap. I hope you all enjoyed. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all later. Bye.